Once upon a time, in a land filled with magic, sparkling castles and whispering forests, there lived a princess whose beauty was as pure as snow and as bright as the morning sun. Her name was Snow White, and her story is one of kindness, courage, and the magic of true friendship. Snow White was gentle and sweet. She loved the animals of the forest, the singing birds, and the blooming flowers. Her eyes shone with kindness, and her smile warmed everyone's heart. But not everyone was happy with Snow White's beauty. The queen, her stepmother, had a magical mirror that always told the truth. Every day she would ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror would answer, "You, my queen, are fair, but Snow White is fairer still." This made the queen jealous, for she could not stand that anyone was more beautiful than her. One morning, Snow White wandered into the forest. She sang a cheerful song, and the little animals gathered around her. Rabbits hopped, deer peeked through the trees, and bluebirds fluttered above. Snow White laughed gently. Oh, how lovely it is to have so many friends. But the queen's jealousy grew stronger. She decided to send Snow White far away. Snow White, frightened and alone, ran deeper into the forest. The trees seemed tall and dark, and the shadows stretched long. But soon, the animals came to her side, guiding her to a safe path. After a long walk, Snow White discovered a tiny cottage tucked beneath the tall trees. She stepped inside and gasped. The chairs were so small, the cups were so tiny, and the beds were lined up in a row like toy beds. "Oh my," Snow White whispered. "Perhaps children live here?" But it was not children. It was 7 dwarfs. That evening, they came marching home, singing as they worked. Their names were Happy, Sleepy, Dopey, Bashful, Sneezy, Grumpy, and Doc. At first, they were surprised to find Snow White in their cottage. But Snow White smiled kindly and said, "Please, may I stay here? I will cook and clean and keep your home bright and cheerful." The dwarfs looked at one another, then nodded. "Of course, you are welcome here," said Doc, the wisest. And so Snow White began her new life in the forest cottage. She cooked delicious meals, baked warm bread, and filled the house with laughter. The dwarves adored her. Each day they marched off to the mines to dig for jewels, and Snow White would wave goodbye at the door. But far away the queen was still watching. One day she asked her mirror again, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror replied, "Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs, is the fairest of them all." The queen's eyes flashed with anger. "Then I must find her," she hissed. Disguising herself as an old woman, she made her way into the forest. Snow White was at the cottage, baking pies and humming to herself. When she heard a knock, she opened the door. There stood an old woman with a basket of shiny red apples. "Lovely apples, dear," croaked the woman. "Won't you try one?" The apple looked delicious, but Snow White hesitated. The dwarfs had warned her not to trust strangers, yet the old woman smiled sweetly and offered the apple again. Snow White took a bite. Suddenly her eyes grew heavy, and she fell into a deep, deep sleep. When the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying still, the apple beside her. "Snow White!" they cried, shaking her gently. But she did not wake. Tears filled their eyes as they built a crystal bed for her in the forest, surrounded by flowers. Days turned into weeks, and the animals came often to watch over her. Birds sang softly, and the dwarfs stayed by her side, hoping she would wake. Then one day a kind prince, who had heard of Snow White's beauty and goodness, came riding through the forest. He saw her lying in the crystal bed, her face peaceful, her lips red as roses. Moved by her kindness and beauty, he leaned down and kissed her gently. And in that magical moment, Snow White's eyes fluttered open. The spell was broken. She sat up and smiled as the dwarfs cheered and the animals danced with joy. Snow White and the prince soon became close friends, their hearts full of love and happiness. She thanked the dwarfs for their kindness, promising to visit them often. The forest rang with laughter, music, and cheer. And so, Snow White lived happily ever after, her days filled with joy, her heart always kind. The story of Snow White reminds us that true beauty is not just in how we look, but in how we treat others, with kindness, with love, and with a gentle smile. If you like this story, don't forget to join us for more magical tales every week.